Hello and welcome back to Live from Paris. Owen's here now with a look at all today's business news. And we're going to start off with the Asian markets because they've been giving their approval to that austerity plan in Greece.
Yeah, huge question marks over this remain, Lorna, but we'll get into the details of that. But as things stand, that's not a bad session on a Monday for the Nikkei, closing the day around 0.6% in the green. The Hang Seng in similar sort of territory. You can just see in the last hour or so the Shanghai Composite turning into the red, about 0.2% down. Further questions in China over what the government is going to do to stop that economy overheating. There's talk there of rolling bank loans over just to give municipalities and city councils a little bit of extra breathing room. I should just mention while we're talking markets as well, just to temper all that, according to new data from the Japanese government, the economy shrank by 2.3% in the last quarter of 2011, much more than most analysts and economists' expectations. We've seen, of course, the yen struggling throughout 2011, and, of course, the Japanese economy still recovering, really, from the Fukushima disaster.
OK. Well, nonetheless, as we were saying, a rare breakthrough there in the Greek crisis. The latest austerity plans aimed at meeting the strict new terms of a new bailout. But there are concerns among some international creditors that even with another 130 billion euros, Greece will remain saddled with just too much debt.
A late-night agreement to Greece's sixth austerity plan. The yes vote means yet more bailout money for the Greek government and further belt-tightening for the people.
We will take a new loan to guarantee the sustainability of the debt, but above all, to overcome this crisis by our own strength.
Greece is set to receive a total of 130 billion euros in bailout loans. 100 billion euros of debt to private banks will be written off. In order to get this, the Greek government have agreed to cut spending equal to 1.5% of their GDP. The IMF, EU and ECB have called for 30,000 public sector workers to be laid off, and monthly pensions of above 1,000 euros will be cut by a fifth. To reduce labour costs, the minimum wage will be reduced and there'll be an end to holiday bonuses. Then there's measures to get money back into the government kitty. Taxes will go up by over 3 billion euros in 2013. VAT will rise, the tax-free threshold lowered, and for those that can afford them, there'll be luxury taxes on yachts, pools and cars. But what's the aim of all this? Well, to cut Greece's government debt from where it is now at 160% of GDP to 120% by 2020. Some analysts are sceptical. They think the measures are so tough, the Greek economy will shrink, tax revenues decrease, and the deficit will just get larger. And yet, in the short term, Greece has avoided bankruptcy. A 14 billion euro bill to private lenders that Greece couldn't pay was due next month.
Just to go into the detail of that a little bit more, Lorna, of course, we saw in that report there that under the terms of this austerity package and, of course, that new bailout plan, the EU leaders are still yet to sign off, don't forget. You're going to see Greece have its debts cut somewhat by $100 billion, but we shouldn't get too excited by all of this. Remember, this is a country that's still got around 250 billion euros in various bonds, various treasury bills and so on, that still have to be accounted for now. If we look at Greece's borrowing costs as things stand on 10-year bonds, the interest that investors are demanding is up 32%. It's almost doubled in the last few months. Completely unsustainable, of course. But remember that Greece will still be paying whopping interest on the debts that remain unless they can find some way of dramatically scaling those down. And, of course, much of that depends on market confidence. We're not even sure as well about the final numbers. Greece is setting itself up there for around 10 years or so of austerity with all these various deals. The idea is to bring, of course, that public debt mountain down a little bit. But even Wolfgang Schäuble, the German finance minister, he was reported as saying at the end of last week he doesn't think that, in fact, Greece's debts are going to come down significantly. The target was to try and get the debts down to around 120% of GDP. He thinks it might be 125, 130%. By any normal measure, that's still unsustainable. You can only really run that kind of debt if you've got an economy that's growing, if your manufacturing base is there. These aren't things that you can really say about a country like Greece right now.
But under the terms of this bailout, there will be a debt swap, and that could bring down a lot of it.
Yeah, we shouldn't forget that, of course. Remember, we've got these private creditors, hedge funds and so on. They've been basically bamboozled over these last few weeks to bring down the rate of interest that they're demanding to around 3.5%. That would be manageable, of course. That's 10 times less than Greece is currently paying on its 10-year bonds. But remember, again, it only applies to a certain percentage of that debt, around 60 billion euros or so. And of course, there's no guarantee that those private creditors will stick to these agreements sort of 5-10 years down the line if Greece doesn't really pull ahead and show some kind of growth.
OK, well, we're going to take a look now at a few more of today's business headlines. Qantas has run into more trouble with its Airbus Super Jumbo fleet. A flight from London had to twice abandon takeoff due to steering issues. After a 5-hour delay, the aircraft was finally cleared to fly. Qantas says the problem isn't related to cracks in the wings that have forced all airlines using the A380 into carrying out wide-ranging checks.
Rupert Murdoch is expected to head to the UK later this week amid a fresh crisis in his News Corp empire. Police have arrested nearly 9 senior staff from the UK Sun tabloid over allegedly bribing police for information. Murdoch closed its former sister title, The News of the World, last year over the UK phone hacking scandal.
And 2 of North America's biggest book retailers have joined forces to boycott Amazon. The US chain Barnes & Noble and Canada's Indigo Books and Music are refusing to stock titles released by Amazon's new publishing venture. They're objecting to Amazon's push to sign deals with authors that prevent other retailers selling digital versions of their books.
I'll just mention while we're going through the headlines as well, getting some results in from Olympus. Remember, the Japanese camera maker at the centre of that false accounting scandal that wiped out its share price by some 80%, forecasting a full year loss of $412 million in the wake, as I say, of that false accounting scandal that the company is still dealing with right now. It has to submit accounts to Japanese auditors tomorrow under the terms of a new auditing process. So we'll keep an eye on those results for you as we get them in.
OK, well, I think that's just about all we've got time for this Business Bulletin. Thank you very much indeed, Owen, for all that news. And we'll be back shortly, but Stuart's going to be back even more shortly after the news with the international, just after the international weather forecast. Sorry, that's coming up next.
Each revolution has its own music. 1 year ago, Tahrir Square became the symbol of Egyptian revolution, a sit-in of 18 days which led to the fall of Mubarak. Every day, new poems and songs were written there. An artistic revival was underway. 1 year on, we went back to Cairo to meet these politically active musicians and poets. Many of them have now chosen to make a living from their art. But they all have the same dream, to breathe new life and freedom into their country through music. The Songs of Tahrir Square, Music at the Heart of the Revolution, a unique web documentary on France24.com.
From the onset of Syria's uprising, the government has barred reporters from telling their story. The regime's bloody crackdown has silenced most who dare speak out against it. France 24's reporters infiltrated northern Syria's Idlib region. Living alongside civilians and Free Syrian Army fighters, they bring you footage from the heart of the opposition. A special report from inside forbidden Syria. Tomorrow, 1:40 p.m. Paris time on France 24.